Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Joining us tonight, pleased to say, the Mirror's John Cross and Miguel Delaney from The Independent. Evening to you both, coming to us from Germany. Only one place to start, though, and that is back in England with the big breaking news that Erik Ten Hag is to stay at Manchester United. Our reporter, Dharmesh Sheth, joins us before we get to John and Miguel with the full story for us. Dharmesh, what can you tell us?
Yeah, Teddy, I mean, it was the big question, wasn't it? Would Erik Ten Hag stay or would he be sacked as Manchester United manager? Remember, he did maintain throughout all of the talks that he'd had with Sir Jim Ratcliffe and everyone at Ineos that he believed he would be the man to lead Manchester United forward. He still maintained that he was under contract until next summer at least, and he had no reason to believe that he wasn't going to be the Manchester United manager. And over the past couple of weeks, we know about this post-season review that Manchester United have conducted following that FA Cup final victory against Manchester City. And after that review that looked over the last season and the broader first-team operations, the club and Erik Ten Hag held constructive discussions about what had happened over the past season and what potentially could happen in the future. Now, Manchester United, it should be said here, considered all eventualities. Now, by that, they did speak to other managers, they did speak to representatives of other managers, for example, Thomas Tuchel, Kieran McKenna, Mauricio Pochettino as well. But the clear conclusion after that review and after all of those talks was that Erik Ten Hag would remain as manager. Now, as a result of all of this, both the club and Erik Ten Hag are believed to be aligned and have now entered significantly negotiations over a contract extension. Remember, he's got 1 year left on his contract as the Manchester United manager. But following this review and following those talks, this is really significant now because talks have now begun over a contract extension for Erik Ten Hag that would see him remain as Manchester United manager, not only for the remainder of his contract, that's the final year, that's next year, but beyond as well.
Dharmesh, how significant do we believe the FA Cup final win was then, particularly coming against Manchester City in the style in which it was achieved?
I mean, look, that was one of the factors that, the review would have considered, but it was the whole season as well, and that's why there was so much doubt about whether Erik Ten Hag would remain as Manchester United manager. Remember, they had an 8th place finish. Never before had Manchester United finished that low in a Premier League season. They had a negative goal difference. And this followed a season when he'd won a trophy, the League Cup, he got them to the quarterfinals of the Europa League and got them to a 3rd place finish in the Premier League and Champions League football. But this season has not gone according to plan. Their defence of the League Cup, that finished early. They were knocked out of the group stages in the Champions League. Such was the poor performance of the Champions League, that they finished bottom of that group and they were eliminated from Europe before Christmas. So that in itself would not help Erik Ten Hag. But I think everything that was considered included potentially the injury situation that Manchester United and Erik Ten Hag had to deal with as well. And I think all of those factors together, coupled with, because remember, they did consider all eventualities here, coupled with maybe not being able to find another manager that they believe would do a better job than Erik Ten Hag, that is significant as well. And I think all of those factors put together has come to the conclusion that Erik Ten Hag is the man to lead Manchester United forward for the remainder of his contract at least, because now we have a situation where the club and Erik Ten Hag have entered into negotiations over a contract extension.
Ahead of the transfer window opening as well. Dharmesh Sheth, thank you very much. OK, well, let's bring in our guests. Let's come to Miguel Delaney first. Miguel, of course, people compiling the back pages, scrambling to rip up what was there and put Ten Hag on there. What's your reaction to this news first and foremost?
Had I heard it 3 weeks ago before the cup final, I think I would have been much more surprised. Now, with just everything we've heard over the past few days and the way it's been tracking, it felt like it was almost coming towards this situation, especially as news started to leak about kind of meetings they'd had with other managers, how those managers suddenly, I mean, the two biggest ones being, and the two most famous, of course, being Pochettino and Tuchel, So I think once it was confirmed tonight, it wasn't that much of a surprise. I suppose there is then a bigger debate over whether it is the correct decision or even whether Manchester United went about it in the correct way. Now, I know Ineos would insist that as, a new minority ownership coming in, who do have control over football, they have to go about things their way. But it is, I suppose, at the least, a sort of a curious situation to leave the manager you're now entrusting the medium-term future of the club with to this kind of open future for the past few weeks where he didn't know what was going to happen himself. And I'd heard last week that Ten Hag himself was pushing for clarity. So it's a curious situation, but I suppose, at least from United's perspective, and actually one that the fans, given the reaction to the FA Cup, will be quite happy with, it's ended with a firm decision.
It's interesting Miguel says that, John, because there were reports in the papers before this story broke that Ten Hag was angry at the uncertainty. Are you surprised from his part, given the coverage of the conversations with other managers, that he's willing to stay, and as Dharma Sheth reports there, potentially signing an extended contract?
Yeah, but I think to do a really thorough review, Teddy, I do think it's actually pertinent that you do speak to other managers. You do look at other potential situations. And listen, I respect and actually really admire the decision to stick with Ten Hag. I mean, I tell you what, a lot of United fans, I think, are on board as well. Yes, it's been a choppy season. Yes, it's been indifferent at times. They've had troubles right towards the end. But I think if you are honestly going to do a review, and a thorough review at that, and United said from very early on that basically that's what they were going to do, then I do think you have to go through all those eventualities, seek it out, speak to Erik Ten Hag in detail, speak to other candidates in detail. And I actually think they've come to, a good conclusion, because maybe not everyone else fitted, and Erik Ten Hag, I think, definitely has mitigating factors. One of the key elements, let's not forget, in this review, I think, of the club structure and everything that's going on is the medical department. They clearly had so many injuries towards the end of the season. Frankly, that completely hampered them, is the reason why they lost so many games towards the end. Ten Hag, really pulled off a tactical masterclass, I thought, in the FA Cup final. Fantastic. That's almost, won back fans to sort of say, treat him with respect. He's given us 2 trophies in 2 years. That's the very least he deserves. I always think it's very difficult when managers almost lose the fans' trust a little bit and faith. And I think along the way, Ten Hag has been in danger of that. So I still think there's convincing to do. I actually think this is a brave and bold decision, even more so to perhaps reward him with a new contract. So I do admire their stance on it.
OK, John, happy with the thorough process as well. Miguel said it needed to take time. In the Telegraph, this written by Jason Burt before the news broke, we should say, Ten Hag frustrated as job delay hits transfer plans. On that note, Miguel, do you feel it's arrived just in time to plot the movement in the window? And this has been a sticking point as well that people have pointed to, isn't it? What role will Ten Hag have in transfers? Could that potentially be reduced as part of this extension?
Well, yeah, I mean, it feels like that's inevitable, given that, and it also, actually, let's not forget, if that is the case, it'd be much more in keeping with Ten Hag's the structure he had at Ajax, where he had probably the best results of his career, where he wasn't in charge of recruitment and was just coaching the team. So that need not necessarily be a bad thing. But it's interesting there as well, just a story even above Jason's about Gareth Southgate that I'm sure we get onto. I mean, because to my mind, and from what I've heard as well, that has influenced some of this as well. We know about the connections between the new United hierarchy and Southgate. Brailsford knows it well. I wrote a few weeks ago that Brailsford sees Southgate as a priority. Obviously, though, that was quite difficult to do in terms of kind of timing, even politically this summer, given how difficult it would be for, say, Southgate to suddenly announce he was going to Manchester United mid-summer or after the Euros. So I think that has at least been one factor on this. And in that, if, say, they do see Southgate as someone for the future, and I suppose at the moment now it's as if all bets are off. Well, that does feed into this decision, because if they're going to get rid of Ten Hag, it had to be someone exactly right. And obviously, from all the candidates I've interviewed, they just didn't. John's alluded to it there, but it didn't feel like anyone was worth getting rid of Ten Hag for. And I suppose that's all more that it's going to be more pronounced if they do have someone longer term in mind. But who knows? Plans might change now, and this could be one of those juncture moments in the history of the club after a really difficult season, maybe bolstered by the FA Cup. Ten Hag does knuckle down, and we see the team more as he would want it, and we'll see whether kind of the truth of all the debates of this season, whether it was injuries that caused it or whether it going down to coaching issues or tactical, well, that could well be decided next season.
Interesting that Miguel mentions that, John, given the fact that Gareth Southgate pictured on the Telegraph there, the players pleading with him not to go after the Euros, the England players. About the new contracts, John, was it obvious that they would extend the contract even if Ten Hag stayed? Was there not a sense of saying, well, actually, this is pretty balanced. We've had an 8th place finish, but we won the FA Cup. Maybe we just see out the year and see what happens. Are you surprised in a way that they've committed to Ten Hag?
I am surprised that they're renegotiating the contract, but I tell you what, fair play to them for doing that, because you can only be fully committed to it if you decide to proceed with Ten Hag as they are indeed doing. I think your only option is to extend the contract, because you have to, I think, show a real forceful show of strength, if you like, and trust and faith in the manager to move forward. That manager must feel support from within the hierarchy, must feel that, I think, to move forward. Listen, I think there's many question marks about Ten Hag. I do feel, though, you can't move away from 2 trophies in 2 years. You know, he has won. I think the point for me is that United need to be up there, sort of in the Champions League places, and indeed, I think, challenging for the title. But I think to make that sort of stride and progress, a manager has to feel a trust and a faith from the hierarchy. And I do think that's why they have decided, I think, to kind of, if they're going to move forward this, you can't do it sort of kind of, 50% in. You have to be all in and support the manager. I think Miguel touched on a really important point there as well, that continental managers basically always used to a different way of managing, I think, to allude to kind of any issues within working with a different structure, if you like. Of course, players are recruited. And I think, let's be honest, some of the recruitment in recent times hasn't been good enough. That's, again, another area that they have to look at. But I do think they're putting complete faith in the manager. They're overhauling and reviewing other aspects of it. And if you trust Ten Hag and if he's delivered, then I think you absolutely have to go with that. And I think United have made a bold but the right ultimate choice.
OK, John, clarity then. Manchester United, though, 8th. Miguel, they were 8 points off 4th placed Aston Villa. We'll finish this part before we head to a break with your sense of what he needs to achieve in the coming season to survive another review. What is the minimum target now for Ten Hag?
I think John said it there. They've got to get back into the Champions League, re-establish the club. He did get back in the first season, but United need to be there regularly. And that would be their level. It should be their level. And I think that has to be the minimum target for next season.
OK, brilliant. Miguel, Delaney, John Cross, thank you very much for now. We're going to take a quick break with that. When we come back, we'll look at more of the back pages with the other stories around, including this in the eye on a fitness boost for England. Good day with the open training. More on that to come. Welcome back. You are watching Back Pages tonight, and it's welcome back to John Cross from The Mirror and The Independent's Miguel Delaney. Let's go to The Guardian. 3 lines, fitness boost, Saka and Stones join in 10th session as Serbia opener looms. John, you're out there, you're with the England camp. Are you as optimistic and as reassured as some of these headlines are suggesting about the fitness of all the players?
Well, I was, yeah. I attended the open training session. It is something that UEFA do, actually. They basically ask every national team to kind of do one public open session for kind of locals. England have got a fabulous training base. We're told they're doing their first press conference from there tomorrow. But this actually they did it as sort of a local team, fairly near to where they're staying. They had about 500 kids watching. And honestly, all 26 were out there. I would suggest that perhaps Luke Shaw tailed off towards the end. I'm still worried about him, but I have to say, seeing John Stones out there training fully was a big bonus. I do think Bukayo Saka's such an important and incredibly popular player in the England camp. To see, I mean, he's missed a few sessions, really, but to sort of see him really go at it full tilt. And I love the way that actually one really nice bit of colour was that, Harry Kane, whenever he went over towards the kids and sort of trained in that little bit of corner, it was almost like Beatlemania. He did a fantastic reception that he got from the local fans. Easy to remember why. He's playing for Bayern Munich. He's been the big star in the Bundesliga, scored an absolute hatful of goals, absolute revelation, and they loved him. They were chanting his name. If that doesn't make him feel good I don't know what will. He was really enjoying it, I think. So a nice session. There was a nice vibe to it. I do think that, I think the positivity is around fit players. Do still worry about the defence, Teddy. Oh, it's a nagging doubt for me. That one, I do think that might be ultimately their Achilles heel, because honestly, the rest of the pitch, wow, what a fantastic array of options they've got for the Euros.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Achilles heel's an injury they've got, but it may be one they're hoping not to pick up in the coming days, Miguel. On that note, in the back page, Luke, who's fit again, Luke Shaw, had a story about Southgate shifting culture of England from gloom of 2016. How key is this Shaw situation, do you feel, Miguel? The goal scorer, of course, in the last Euros final.
Well, I think it's all the more important, given what Crossie's touched on there, which is basically, I suppose, that it is the thinnest. I mean, as a whole, the defence is the thinnest area of Southgate's squad. It's probably going to bring compromises or require compromises, but he'll have to make less of those if he has some of his trusted players back. And Shaw is as trusted as he can get for Southgate. But not only that, he's not just distinctive for England. I think he's from talking to people around other squads and that, he's distinctive in this tournament as a kind of a true left back in that sense. And so, I mean, he could end up being very important in that regard. It's why maybe there's just a slight concern then of what John's saying there about where he trailed off towards the end. I suppose maybe that's to be expected given his recent situation. But yeah, it is so important. And I suppose all of this, I mean, it does feel like just this fitness issue is forget about the actual result on Friday. I mean, even when we spoke to Southgate afterwards, he didn't seem too concerned about the result. I mean, he even pointed to how the biggest issue for him was that he didn't work as well off the ball. And it's, I mean, speaking from the outside, it's difficult not to think that's connected to this bigger question of the last game before the tournament. Players don't want to get injured, especially not to compound the issues that England have had. And yeah, if Shaw can get back, I mean, maybe from the way John is talking there, maybe we're looking at Shaw potentially his second or third game back to something close to what you'd expect. But yeah, he is absolutely crucial. Yeah,
on that note with the defence as well, talking about warm-up games, John Stones pictured on the back page of the Star with the headline Rolling Stones and the subheading there, Wild Horses won't keep John out of the opener. What was your take on Stones' fitness there? And I know Anthony Gordon's called him a mentality monster. His importance as a character, a composed leader, is he, to witness on the field?
Yeah, we spoke to Anthony Gordon actually after the training session. Anthony Gordon's a really good talker, really eloquent, and actually put it really well, I felt, about John Stones, just how inspirational he is as a figure. Listen, he's by far and away the most accomplished and experienced and top quality centre half. Listen, ideally Harry Maguire would be there for his physicality and his experience. But I just feel as if, they will miss that presence. But I think Mark Gay is a really top draw defender. You just wonder whether he's got enough time to kind of bond with Stones. I think, individually they're very, very good. But I think Stones having him there as a presence is really important for the England team. And he did look really sharp in training. There was certainly no holding back. He was only substituted, of course, as a precaution. He hurt his leg during the game against Iceland. Really reassuring, I think, there. For England to have him back. Listen, let's not get away from the fact one of the key issues is they'll probably start Kieran Trippier at left back on Sunday against Serbia in the opening game. That means their whole defence, their back four, are all right footers. You're going one way. It is not exactly the balance that England are looking for. But having said that, I do think that there's enough quality. There's really good willing players in there as well, like a Trippier, for example, to kind of, give absolutely everything. It's a good mentality. It's a good squad atmosphere. And I do think England have got a decent chance if they can convince everyone about the defensive woes.
Well, maybe are those injuries, are they mitigating for Gareth Southgate? I wonder. Let's just check back in, Miguel, with that Telegraph story we did mention earlier in the show. But don't go, Gareth. Players urge manager to stay after quit hint. Can you conceive of a scenario in which England don't win the Euros and he remains? He suggested to the German paper Bild today that he will go if they don't win it. But do you think another gallant defeat could keep him in the job?
I think there's a few scenarios, yeah. I mean, let's not forget, maybe this is going to be Southgate's future in other ways. We had this, I suppose, almost the same story, really, in the 2022 World Cup. And then it was only afterwards, when he reflected on how the competition went, that he felt he should stay. And similar, one of the reasons he stayed after 2022 was because he felt the youth of the team was so exciting. And that's actually something that's only become more pronounced since then. I mean, the squad he's picked for this. And actually, it was something that's very interesting last week, or the day before the Iceland game, where Southgate tried to maintain a respectful tone about kind of the players he wasn't bringing, such as Jack Grealish. But at the same time, you could really sense the excitement from him about just how vibrant and young this team is, with obviously a big future ahead of them. And I mean, even if they don't win, depending on how England go out, if they don't, maybe that again, as a 2022, maybe in a stronger way, could have effect again. Because would he want to not be the man to bring that generation through to potentially a trophy, to leave it to someone else? That's a bigger debate, obviously, but it is something that could play in his mind.
Absolutely. In Erfurt with you, John, Matt Law for The Telegraph writes Walker, Rice and Trippier join Kane as squad leaders. Is that something that you identify when you watch the players there?
Yeah, I do think that's an element. Listen, they used to have a very formal kind of leadership group when you had a group of senior players. Gareth Southgate actually moved away from that process, but that's not to say that those guys aren't experienced guys. I mean, who takes the armband if Kane is missing, for example, in part of a game? I do think it's probably Kyle Walker now. Declan Rice putting himself forward as a potential future England captain. Trippier is such a good pro, such a good servant for England. So I do think, if you've got those guys in your squad and basically leading by example, then you're very happy. And I think that's why it's kind of allowed Gareth Southgate to kind of enjoy this longevity and things. I must say, I do feel, unless he wins it this summer, I do think this will be Southgate's last hurrah. It might be anyway, but what an innings he's had. Absolutely fantastic 8-year reign. No wonder he's getting admiring glances, and hopefully he can go out with a bang. Absolutely.
I think less pressure on Steve Clarke to win it, Miguel, but quickly, you've got about 10, 15 seconds. You've been enjoying some of the Scottish fans' company, I understand. Yeah,
I mean, I just got to Munich tonight, actually. Got to fly from Heathrow today, and already I've seen a lot of kills. And a lot of spirits already. So, the atmosphere is already building 3 days out.
Very envious, gents. Enjoy it. Miguel, John, thank you very much for now. Thank you for watching. If you missed any of the show, another chance to see Back Pages tonight at hour. And the show's also available as a podcast. Just download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Join us again on Wednesday evening when our guests will be Henry Winter and Charlie White. No doubt lots more Euros build-up. That is from 10:30 p.m.